Hi, I'm Jill from Friends on the Block. In this video, I'm going to focus on teaching students important individual words. I'm continuing our series called How to Teach Anyone to Read and Have Fun While Doing It. The procedures I'm going to share are easy to follow and will have students reading their first books right away. Our goal at Friends on the Block is to help ensure that everyone, regardless of disability or circumstance, learns to read. So far in our series, we've had videos on teaching students the sounds that letters represent, as well as teaching students phonemic awareness. Those videos are important because they discuss how to teach skills that are critical to learning how to sound out. In other words, we're preparing students to decode or sound out words. In this video, I'm focusing on teaching students a few words that we call irregular words because the students don't yet know how to sound them out. We call these words high-frequency irregular words, or sometimes we refer to them as sight words. So high-frequency words are simply common words found in print. Many high-frequency words can and should be learned using common phonics patterns because they can be sounded out. So what a student would do is look at the letters in a word, like this word not. They would look at the N and think N. They'd look at the O and say ah. They look at the T and they say T. So N, ah, T. So that's the letter sounds, and then they have phonemic awareness. They're able to blend those sounds together to say the word not, not. But there are also high-frequency words or common words that do not follow those common phonics patterns, like the word friend. Another word would be was. They don't follow those patterns, so we call those high-frequency irregular words. There's actually some debate about how to teach these words and different definitions of sight words. I'm going to discuss some more terms as well as the research and some of the questions that we have about how to teach sight words at the end of this video. But right now I'm going to focus on how to teach sight words using a very simple approach that has been used in many studies that have a lot of evidence of their effectiveness. The objective here is very straightforward. What you want the student to be able to do is when they see one of these high-frequency irregular words, they're able to read that word. They're able to say that word. There is no one exact order to teach these words in. I'm going to give you some tips on selecting words, but the order that we use in Friends on the Block is listed here. At least these are our first 6 words. I'm going to tell you more about why we chose these words in just a minute, but right now I want to describe to you this term temporarily irregular. 2 of the words on this list, like and not, are words that eventually the students will know the sounds and the patterns to be able to figure out those words or sound out those words. But right now they don't have the skills to sound out those words. So they're in our list of high-frequency irregular words because they are temporarily irregular for the students. So the objective is the student will read high-frequency irregular or temporarily irregular words. We call these words read it words in our Friends on the Block program. Other programs may call them tricky words or sight words or some other term. The basic steps for practicing these words is exactly what you would expect. The students just look at a word and they say it. An easy script you can follow is just to say, look at each word when I point to it. Read it when I tap it. So then you'll have a word and you'll point to that word and then say, read it. The basic steps for introducing a new word or for making a correction if a student makes a mistake with a word are also very simple and straightforward. So first you're going to say listen and then tell them the word. Then you're going to say read it with me and the 2 of you can read it together. And then you're going to say your turn. It is good when you make a correction that you go back and repeat that word. So if you're practicing in a stack of flashcards, you can put that card back in the stack so they can practice it again. If you're practicing in a list, you might want to go back to the beginning of the list. If a student is getting frustrated, you want to stop that repetition. When a student is frustrated, you can go back to echo reading, where you say the word and then they just repeat. You say the next word and they just repeat. So that's a good way to practice when you're introducing new words. And we're going to go over that again in just a second. As I mentioned earlier, there is no one exact sequence in which you should teach these high-frequency irregular words. One of the things that makes Friends on the Block really special is the sequence that we chose to put our words in. So I do want to tell you just a little bit about that. We had a whole team of researchers who developed our sequence. We chose words, of course, that are very commonly found in early print that students are going to read. We also selected words that are common in early spoken language. We had a speech therapist on our advisory board who helped us select these words. We also spent a lot of time organizing our words so we could put them together in very natural sounding sentences that would be similar to the way that we speak. We did this because we wanted to make sure our sentences were as meaningful as possible to students, and we felt like if they were similar to our spoken language, they would be more likely to comprehend those sentences and relate to the meaning. These are the words that we teach in our first 3 levels of Friends on the Block. These are all read it words, because at this point the students do not have the skills to sound out any of these words. The words that are in blue are temporarily irregular because we haven't taught the skills that students need yet to sound out those words. When you're selecting words, you can just use our list, of course, and we have our books that go along with that list. You can also choose words from other high-frequency word lists. We'll give you some resources for those. Or you can choose words from a book that your student is going to practice. For the techniques that I'm going to be describing today, the focus should be on irregular words, as it's definitely best to use phonics as much as possible. So when a word can be sounded out, you definitely want to use phonics to sound out that word rather than using the techniques I'm going to be going over today. You do want to choose words that can be put together to form very simple sentences. It's very helpful to put words into sentences as quickly as possible so students can practice not just reading individual words, but words in sentences. Finally, you want to choose a few at a time and then keep reviewing the words that the student has previously learned. So as you add new words, you want to practice those old words as well. If you've watched our other videos, you know that our lesson routine has 3 parts. There's a warm-up, a book reading, and then a game or a fun learning activity where you get most of your practice. Let's start with the warm-up. I did describe this in a previous video. This may be familiar to you. I'm going to go through it pretty quickly right now. When you first introduce new words, or if a student is really struggling and needs a lot of support, you can use echo reading. All echo reading is you read the word and they repeat it. So you just hold up the word, listen, my turn, do, your turn, and then the child says do. That's all there is to it. And you just do that with one word after another. All they have to do is echo. Another way to practice during the warm-up is just a little bit harder, and I call this pickup words. You just lay out a few words on cards in front of them, and then you call out the words. So you would say, listen, do, find it and pick it up. And then they would pick up the word do, and you would say, what's the word? And they would repeat do. And you would just keep doing that until you've picked up all of the words. Be sure that you make corrections very quickly. You want to help within 2 to 4 seconds. So if they don't pick up the right word, just point to the word they should have picked up so they can pick it up and then read it. If they say the wrong word, then just repeat the word again. During book reading at this early stage, the student should point to each word as it is read. When they're learning their very first words, they're not just learning those words, they're also learning what a word is and that there are spaces between words and the one-to-one correspondence. Very early on, you may see kids saying things like, I do not like bananas, and they're not even looking and they're just pointing and they're not pointing to the right word. So it's really important that they point to each word as they say it so you know they're looking at the right spot. You should provide help quickly, and you should use books that include the words that you're practicing. If you don't have books for your particular sequence, then try to put those words into a sentence so they can at least be reading sentences at this early stage. Here's a sample of one of our very first books. The only words the students are learning how to read in this book are these 6 words: a, do, I, like, not, and want. The other words that you see there are for the adult to read. So this part that's in gray is for the teacher or the tutor or the parent to read for the student. We call this helper text. So the helper reads what's in the gray boxes. The student does not read those. It includes lots of words that you don't expect them to be to know or to be learning at this point. The student reads the text that's in white, and you'll notice that there are some picture words. The organization of our words, the words that we chose, as well as having helper text and having these picture words, all of these things enabled us to get students into a book in our very first lessons. I wanted to talk a little bit about how to help when they're reading in a book. When they struggle with the word for just 2 to 4 seconds, just go ahead and tell them the word. If they get tired or frustrated, there are a couple of things you can do. One thing is simply to do more of the reading yourself. If they're getting frustrated and they're missing more than about 2 words per sentence, you can always stop and just echo read for a while. So this works the same as the echoing that I just described, except here you're going to echo read 1 sentence at a time. So you're going to read a sentence and point to each word as you read it, and then the student's going to read that same sentence. They're going to be pointing to each word as they read that same sentence back. You never get the student to read the helper text. This is only for the student text. As I mentioned, a lot of their focused practice on these words is going to come during this fun game or learning activity. So you want to choose something that you think they'll enjoy. You want to make sure that during that activity or that game they get lots of opportunities to practice. Now this third point I want to make really clear, and that is that you should customize the game by selecting the words that your student is practicing right now. You also want to include some review words most of the time, but it's really important that you are practicing the words that your student needs to practice right now. There are just a ton of games out there to practice sight words, but if that game doesn't match your sequence that you're using, then that game needs to be customized. It needs to be changed so that you are practicing the words that your student needs to practice. As always, provide help quickly, even during the game. If they don't know a word, just follow that I, we, you procedure. You also want to include some games where the students get to build the words, either with magnetic letters or some other kind of blocks or tiles that have the letters on them. You do want kids to look at the letters as they are reading that word. You don't want students to just look at the first letter and guess that word. You want them to look at all the letters within a word, and that's going to happen over time. The first game I want to show you is called Shake and Make. We have a wonderful video on this that Dr. Jennifer Cheatham made. In this activity, you build words with letters. It's great because they are looking at each letter in the word. It's fine when you build those words to build them from memory, or they can look at that word and then just copy that word with the letters. Either way is fine. The way the game works is super simple. You just put the letters for the word you want to practice in a cup or container, shake it, roll it out, and then they build that word. But Jennifer gives you all kinds of ideas about ways to make that fun and how to do that in the video. So I hope you'll check out that video. It's also on YouTube. Another simple but great game we play is Scavenger Hunt. For this game, you just have the student find words in the book. So they would find the word want. You might want to show them a page that has the word want on it, but have them find that word, point to the word, and then they build it. If they're finding the word want, then you'll just want to give them a W-A-N-T on letter tiles in a mixed up order so that they can build it. Again, they can build it without looking at the word if they can, or they can just look at the word want and copy it. So they're building it with their tiles while they're looking at the word. In our version of this game, we also practice other skills where they're finding different things. Another really great game that we have in our program, but that you can also make for yourself, we call super sentences. For this game, you just write a sentence with the words you're practicing. So you can see here we wrote the sentence, I want apples. And we have that picture underneath the word apples because that's not one of the words that they're currently working on. Then you would just write the words of that sentence on cards, or you can put it on a strip of paper and then cut it out, whatever way works better for you. You want to lay out the cards for the sentence in a mixed up order, and then the child puts those words into a sentence. They can do it without looking at the sentence, or they can do it looking at the sentence. We also have an amazing words game where the students move around this board with the pawn and it works like a maze. Another one is word bingo. Of course, it's pretty easy for you to make your own word bingo. For this one, we have the words that we're working on, and we also threw in some picture words to make it more fun. Another game we have that you can also make yourself is what we call word play. You use the word play cards to play various card games like Go Fish or Concentration. For this game, you just need to have 2 cards for each word. So 2 A's, 2 do's, 2 I's. So then you can play any game that requires some sort of matching, like Go Fish and Concentration. We add a Silly Sam card, and we use that to play the same game as you would use to play Old Maid. So we follow the same rules as Old Maid. Now that I've shown you how to teach these words using a very simple procedure that is definitely found in many evidence-based programs, I want to talk a little bit more about the research and our rationale for what we did and some of the questions that we still have about teaching these words. The term sight word can be a little confusing because there's more than one meaning of that term. One meaning is that words that are in our memories, so they're recognized instantly without sounding out or using some other strategy, we call those words sight words. So all words should become sight words. Eventually, every time we as a skilled reader look at a word, you immediately recognize the word. You don't have to sound it out. You have what's called an orthographic map of that word in your memory already. So words become sight words when they have an orthographic map in our memories. The orthographic map is a way of describing the connection between the spellings of words and the pronunciation of that word. The other meaning of sight word is one that I've been using throughout this video, and it's just high frequency, irregularly spelled words. These are words that students are often taught to memorize through repetition and feedback. That's what we've been talking about in this video. These kinds of words are also called sight words. Research articles use the term sight words both of these ways, depending on the article and the author, what they're discussing. As I mentioned earlier, it's important that we teach high-frequency words that can be sounded out through phonics instead of teaching them as whole words. That said, I want to review the term irregular words. So remember, as I discussed earlier, irregular words are words that do not follow those common phonics patterns. But there's 2 other related words that I also mentioned. One is you have temporarily irregular words. These are words that do not follow phonics patterns that are known by the student. For example, it's really common to teach the word like as if it is an irregular word, because it's a good while before you're going to teach the spelling of that final E, that the final E makes the I say I in like. Before students are able to learn that pattern, you want them to know that word because it's such a common word and we need it to tell good stories and for the books that we want them to read. Other irregular words are called permanently irregular words. These are words with unique or rare phonics patterns. These are phonics patterns that we don't teach because they're so unusual and they're just not that useful to teach. What do we know from the research? Well, we actually know quite a bit. One thing that's really important is we know that the procedures I just described to you are used in effective evidence-based programs. These programs usually teach high-frequency irregular words or sight words through repetition and feedback. In other words, they teach them by memory. You use a lot of repetition and you give the kids support while they're memorizing those words. Usually these programs also include a few temporarily irregular words, like the word like, as I just described to you. These same evidence-based programs also teach high-frequency regular words through phonics, not through memorization. This is a really important point. We also know that as students' phonics skills improve, they actually learn these irregular words more easily. Some researchers are concerned that teaching sight words or these irregular words in this way might interfere with phonics learning. But the studies that have looked at this show that it does not appear to interfere with phonics learning. This topic was discussed by Castles and some other authors in a 2018 paper, and I'll give you the reference for that paper. That same paper also discusses some things that we do not know from the research, that we don't have evidence for yet. Research isn't clear about how many sight words to teach at different stages or exactly which method of instruction is most effective. We also don't know the minimum level of alphabetic skill needed for sight word instruction to be most effective. Recently, researchers are recommending to teachers methods that involve a pretty detailed analysis of the spelling of these irregular words and how that spelling links to the sounds in the words. Thus far, this method hasn't been studied in the research, though it does have a strong rationale. Again, our sequence is designed to allow students to begin reading books with the support that they need while they're building these prerequisite skills, the skills that they need to be able to sound out words. We're able to teach skills about concept of word, how you read books, and most importantly, about comprehension and meaning, and that the whole purpose of reading is meaning. This is what the next blog is going to be all about. I'll post information about the resources that I've mentioned in this video for you. As always, we greatly appreciate your support. Please do tell others about us on social media, like us, follow us, share us, subscribe. Please subscribe to YouTube. Become a free member on our website and tell other people about the free membership. That free membership includes a reader on every level of our curriculum. These are e-readers that are available for free. It includes some of our games, and we have lots of monthly giveaways and specials. Consider making a purchase if that works for you and is something you're interested in. We have a premium digital membership that includes lots of materials that you can download and use. We also have physical products, including our books, our games, and ready-to-go instructional kits. Thank you so much for watching.